My grandfather passed away in 2007. He was 70 years old exactly. He was old enough to have seen the moon landing live, all the way back in 1969. Most everyone who saw that footage was enamored by the prospect that we as a species had made it to Luna, to a place our ancestors thought too far from our reach. Even now, it fills people with a sense of wonder and awe for the solution of the impossible. My grandfather was the only man I knew who felt otherwise. A gut feeling told him that something terrible is out there in the stars, and that by landing on the moon, we opened a door to madness. After everything that's happened so far, I'm inclined to believe him. That insanity, of course, wasn't on the moon, but rather our dearest neighbor, Mars, the Roman god of war. At times, I think how fitting that name has become over time. I've dug in as far as I can for answers. Just the opportunity to know a little bit more is all I seeked, and I've found what I was looking for. Dear Lord, do I regret it, however. Before I get into that, let me catch you up on things as well as answer a few questions and comments I've received. A month ago, one of our rovers, Curiosity, encountered alien life on Mars. She is the third to do so that I knew of after Spirit and Opportunity, all of which I was here to witness for myself. Just recently, I've discovered that the Soviets have not only landed spacecraft on Mars, but succeeded in doing what NASA has not, putting man on Mars. Much to my dismay, the Soviets did a damn good job at covering up their landings. So much so that almost all of the records are lost or destroyed. Almost all of them. A scarce few remain, and with a bit of digging and bribery, I've gotten a look at them. Most of it is heavily redacted, apart from the centerpiece, what I was definitely happy to find. The live feed recording of the Soviets' Martian landing from 1989, audio and all. I can't upload the video as it will almost definitely attract attention. That's why I haven't uploaded anything beyond my posts, but I certainly can transcribe this for you. The feed starts from the cone of the landing craft as it descends onto the Martian landscape. For a few minutes, nothing of note happens, until the door unseals and slowly opens. Out steps a man who cuts the feed, swapping it to show video and audio from his helmet, exclaiming in Russian. I don't know what exactly he said. He faces the rather impressively large pod, from which the female, Stella Zelina, if records are correct, from Journey's footage exits. She is visibly much younger, 10 years younger in fact. My stomach churns thinking about how long she had been held captive there. The two begin a short exchange.
Touchdown?
Yes, we did it. Can you hear us, Commander? We're on the surface.
The man replies with beaming enthusiasm. The woman steps aside to give room for the rest of the crew to come out. It's a rather large crew of 7 people. 2 men who I recognized from Journey's footage are among them. Thanks to documents, I know that their names are Maxim Durov and Yakov Selner. The 6 crew members gathered in a line as the camera operator showed them off one by one, admiring the dedication and heroism of his crew.
Yakov, you seeing this? I can't believe it.
One cosmonaut, Sergei Chernov, says. Yakov, the crying man from the previous video, steps out of formation and looks around in awe. He's joined by 2 others.
We're heroes, the pride and joy of millions. How could I believe it?
Yakov answers. The second woman, documents name her as Natia Latova, re-enters the capsule along with Maxim and a man named by documents as Luchak Turbin. That leaves Damian Poltanov as the cameraman. The footage is mostly uneventful for the first 30 minutes or so, mostly the crew discussing their excitement and pride for the successful landing while they set up equipment and gather samples. Yakov takes a Soviet flag from the craft and ventures with Sergei to find a place to plant it.
Careful and be back in 10, no less.
Damian orders. Yakov chuckles and keeps walking. I can almost feel Damian roll his eyes. He steps into the pod and the next 10 minutes are simply just waiting. Of course, neither Yakov nor Sergei returned.
Yakov, what's the holdup?
Luchak asks impatiently. No response.
Yakov, Sergei.
Nothing but silence.
Come in, Yakov.
This is Sergei. Can you read me?
Sergei's voice is dumbstruck, contrasting how tough it sounds otherwise.
We found a structure.
Luchak turns to look at Damian in confusion. Natia has no answers either, if she even noticed.
Explain, Sergei.
It's a cavern. Deep. Can't see far into it. Yakov wouldn't listen and went down. Lost comms. Tried to follow, but it's too dark.
Fucking idiot, Yakov. How did he even pass? Sergei, stay where you are. Maxim, Stella, Bring him a lamp. Go find that idiot. Damien, Natia, stay with me.
There's a hint of panic in Sergei's voice. I could tell what cavern he found. I knew exactly what he was referring to. The shrine. I could agree with Luchok's ire. Even though he couldn't have known, Yakov was clearly not the brightest. Maxim and Stella pack up a few supplies before heading out. Damien gives the camera to Stella, and the two head out. The trek to Sergei felt ever familiar, the unmarked ground being filled with footsteps that would be joined by a rover's slow riding across the ground. When Sergei came into view, he waved at Maxim as the cavern was visible behind him. It confirmed my fears. It was definitely the same cavern Lander and Journey had encountered.
Hey, we got the lamp. Have you heard from Yakov?
Maxim asked, setting down the lamp and looking into the hole in the surface.
Nothing, man. Not even static. Idiot's probably lost by now. I told him not to go in. At least I kept the flag.
I'll stay here. Don't get lost now and keep in touch with me or Luchok.
Maxim moved to the flag, standing tall next to it as it flapped in the wind.
Stella with me then? Nice.
Sergei chuckled and glanced at Stella, who scoffed.
In your dreams, Sergei.
Stella shot him down.
Luchok, we're at the crevice. Trench is about 3 meters in diameter. Maxim will stay up here while Sergei and I look for Yakov. That good, Commander?
Permission granted. Go ahead, you two. Don't get lost.
Luchok replied. With that, Sergei and Stella made their way into the cavern. Maxim held the light, leading the way while Stella followed behind him. Occasionally, she'd look down and pick up a rock or some dirt. It wasn't until she encountered a 6-sided obsidian prism that she spoke again.
Come look at this.
Sergei turned around and walked over to her, glancing down at the rock she held in her palm.
What the hell is that?
Don't know. Maxim, Luchok, can you hear us?
Stella called in, but there was no reply. Judging by the terrain, they were almost at the shrine.
Damn, no signal, too far down. Heard from Yakov yet?
No, I haven't heard anything from him.
Sergei was interrupted by an ear-piercing shriek. When I first watched it, I fell back from my chair in shock. It was an incredibly loud, inhuman scream that was tinged with pain and fear. Sergei and Stella rushed down the halls to the source when Yakov's voice finally came in. He was screaming incoherently, violently swearing and gasping for breath before the two reached him at the shrine. Dead on the floor with yellow blood was a smaller Martian, whose head was bashed in with a rock held by Yakov.
What the fuck?
Sergei didn't even have time to ask questions before 3 more poked their heads into the chamber, rage visible in their eyes from the sight of one of their dead. The next few minutes were a blur. Stella made a break back the way she came while Sergei stayed to try and defend Yakov. But as the tapes from the future showed, their fight wouldn't matter. Frantic panting started to fill the audio, drowning out the sounds of screams and fighting from the shrine. Miraculously, Stella got close enough to regain communication with Maxim, who picked up on her horrified gasping.
What the hell is going on down there? We lost you 6 minutes ago. What?
Get back to the fucking shuttle, Maxim.
Calm down, Stella. I can't...
There's something down here, now fucking move, Maxim.
Something? You mean...
Yes, Maxim, now hurry. They're right behind me.
Stella looked back to see 2 Martians running across the cavern's floors on all 4s, chasing her with a maddening bloodlust. A light at the end of the tunnel gave way to the surface, where Stella nearly collapsed into Maxim's arms. Their reunion was short-lived thanks to the creatures behind, which grabbed onto Stella and began dragging her back into the cave. She screamed in horror, kicking and fighting all she could, but the monsters had the upper hand. They tore into her spacesuit, trying to reach the skin beneath. I'll give credit to the Soviets. These suits weren't cheap, and it showed. The creatures that I had seen tear metal into shreds couldn't make a dent in the suit. Maxim must have realized things were lost when even more emerged from the cave, as he started running back towards the shuttle while the Martians gave up on trying to get to Stella's body, simply opting to drag her back into the darkness as she screamed and begged for help. The feed cuts out then and there. I thought that was it, but when I went to stop the footage, I noticed how long it was. It was days long, and giving a cursory glance showed that most of it was black empty feed. That is, until the end of the 5th day, when the footage finally returns. Stella is sitting in some sort of prison chamber, holding the camera in her hands, pointing it towards her face. She's still wearing the tattered and dirty remains of her spacesuit as she wept softly. After a few seconds, she spoke.
This is Stella Zelina, aged 27, part of the USSR's Martian Expanse program. I don't know if Command is receiving this, likely not. The transmitter should still be online back at the shuttle if the shuttle is intact, that is. I don't know if it is or not. I'm reporting one confirmed fatality, Natia Letova. May she rest in peace as an honor to her country. Those things, they killed her. Took her to some sort of table, strapped her down and tore out her guts. Made us watch as their fucked up crowd cheered them on. Yakov is badly injured. They're letting us patch him up. I don't know why. I don't know why they're keeping us alive. There's air down here. It's impossible and it shouldn't be the case, but there's breathable air down here. I saw a couple of plants and farms on my way in. I can hear them speak sometimes at what I assume must be night. I can't tell down here, and it's hard. Their voices are a bit scratchy and range from mellow to violent. I think there's some now. Hold on.
Stella pauses, holding the camera close to the wall. I can vaguely make out the sounds of alien chatter. Their voices seemed wrong, somehow. I don't know how to put it, but it made me feel very uneasy. It's difficult to describe. The best way to put the sound is a mixture between some sort of reptilian croaking and an Asian dialect.
Sorry, I'm distracted now. I just want to go home, you know? Never thought I'd get accepted for this program, and when I first got on the ship, I thought this would be something amazing, and we did land here, we did. We've made it to Mars. I don't think the inhabitants are happy about it. I don't know if it's because Yakov killed one. He says it attacked him first. Another thing I've noticed is that every day they take one of their own down into that first room we found, and after a few minutes they come back without them, coated in blood. Sergei says it's some sort of sacrificial ritual. They dragged the last one kicking and screaming. I don't know why they're killing their own and not us, but...
Stella is interrupted by off-camera shuffling, which prompts her to turn the camera towards the noise, showing Damien, still in his spacesuit but awake. Beside him is Luchok, who is tending to Yakov.
You finally got that thing working? They need to send men up here and fucking trash the place. Shoot every single one of those fucking lizards. Those bastards deserve it after what they did to...
Damien himself is interrupted when Luchok interjects.
Don't be a fucking idiot, Damien. You think anyone's gonna help?
Luchok scoffs, shaking his head. It reminds me of the date of this recording, 1989, 31 years ago. He was right. Nobody would save them. Hell, we knew about them since 1999, and we didn't even bother to help. We just covered it up and moved on. Damien grumbles and walks towards Stella, taking a seat right next to her. He offers to hold the camera wordlessly, and she obliges, handing it over to him.
They took Sergei and Maxim for... something. I don't know what. They still haven't found the ship as far as we know. When Sergei explained, we decided to abandon the ship, leading those things off course. God knows that if they found it, they're looking for it. I think they know that it can get them to Earth. Fuck if they find it.
Damien's grim expression as he stared hopelessly into the camera spoke miles. The sudden recognition in his eyes gave way to sorrow. I remembered that we never saw that craft. Movement comes from outside the cell, and Damien aims the camera to watch with him. A group of Martians march towards it, pushing Sergei and Maxim along. Damien stops breathing for a moment, the view of the camera shaking intensely.
Luchok, how long do the ship's transmitters function after touchdown?
Damien asks, his voice dead set on a suicidal idea that I already knew he'd go through with.
About a week or two tops. Why?
Luchok answers, oblivious to Damien's idea. Stella gasps, seemingly putting two and two together.
I'm going to get this camera to the ship and send the feed to command. Then I'm going to activate the launch sequence.
Damien explains his plan. Stella quietly pleads with him not to as the Martians grow closer.
The launch sequence won't function without the coolant tanks. It'll blow itself apart.
I know.
Do you need us to buy you some time?
Luchok is heard getting up as well, and Stella sighs, realizing that there's no use arguing against Damien.
Do whatever you can do. Sergei and Maxim are smart enough to know. I can get back there easily. I'll get this sent out so Command knows what kind of fucked up shit is down here.
Stella and Luchok were in silent agreement. When the Martians opened the cell door, the three of them charged into them, catching all off guard. Damien made a break for it with the camera, as the others did what they could to hold them back. After a short scuffle, Luchok's pained screams echoed throughout the damp, dark corridors before it turned to eerie gurgling, as I could only assume his body was defiled and ripped into endless shreds. Thankfully, Damien didn't turn the camera back to look. He kept going through the caves, reaching the massive area Journey would encounter a decade later, then running into the farming rooms. I knew he'd make it, but the tense sounds of the creatures crawling across the halls right behind him. I don't know how he had the courage to keep running, past a familiar shrine, adorned with a Martian's mangled corpse indicating the recent sacrifice, and into the natural formations of the cave until the distant beams of the sun were shining through the crack in the surface. The flag of the USSR was still firmly attached to its flagpole. Damien ripped it from the ground and finally glanced behind him with the camera. He swung the pole with all of his strength as one of the Martians came to the surface, knocking them back into the others in a pile. Taking the advantage while they were down, he speared the pole through all 5 of them, slicing into their scaled flesh and sending their blood flying with an audible yell. Victorious, Damien continued his sprint towards the craft, having bought himself time. In the distance, it came into view, Damien clutching the camera tightly in his hand. I could hear more scampering behind him. They were back on track. He quickly undid the seal, pulling the hatch and climbing inside. Before he could close it, one of the Martians dived into the opening, becoming trapped with him inside. The noises outside stopped. It was clear they didn't want to risk destroying the spacecraft. Damien swung at the monster inside of the craft, knocking them to the ground. He took a moment to show the view outside from the interior of the shuttle, before speaking one last time.
If this thing's still on, stay the fuck away from here. You got that?
The feed finally ends as Damien presumably hooked up the camera to send back all of the footage it had obtained. The rest of the Soviets' records show that the craft stopped sending any signals 8 minutes later, indicating its destruction in the failed takeoff. The Soviets were dumbfounded and horrified. All of their remaining reports indicate the absolute chaos they devolved into after. Hell, it may have even contributed to the collapse of the Union for all I know. Thoughts of many people believing it may be best to destroy nations to hide the truth. Whatever is the case, Russia isn't even aware of this. Everyone assigned around that time either went into isolation, assumed new identities, or took their lives. After I saw it, after I took it all in, I don't know what to do anymore. The Martians are not only aware of us, they almost definitely were attempting to rebuild that spacecraft. God knows what the hell they'd do if they got here. Even if we have the upper hand, who knows how many lives would be lost. Other than that, there was nothing more I could find from the Soviets. I tried looking for information from other space agencies, and there's absolutely nothing I could find. That was until I looked back at us, back at NASA. I mentioned earlier that it'd be impossible to just glass or nuke the planet. I stand by that statement. You see, I found out why NASA kept sending rovers to Mars. Why we keep sending things up to that planet that those creatures could just use against us. We can't launch a nuke and hope it kills them. It's too precise of a projection. What we can do is send something that they wouldn't think twice about. Something that they'd unknowingly take into the heart of their people. A Trojan horse. Remember back when I first decided to tell you all about this? The rover Curiosity. She's still active. The Martians took her back into their cave, and she's still sending feeds. They took it to the cave, the one that all had found before and fallen victim to. They want to show us another sacrifice. They want to show Curiosity her first and only blood show before they destroy her. The Martians are preparing for it. They should perform their ritual sometime next week. And Curiosity is ready. Ready to do what she was always destined to do. I can only hope she pulls this off.